He walked past Billionaires to talk to the woman on her knees because he thought she owned the mansion. The music echoed through the marble halls of the luxury estate. Waiters in white gloves served champagne to CEOs, royalty, and the elite. But while others danced, one woman on her knees was scrubbing the floor. When the millionaire host locked eyes with her, he didn't see a cleaner. He saw someone who didn't belong in rags at all. Sometimes the most beautiful stories begin in silence, in the overlooked corners of a glamorous world. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the magic of seeing people for who they really are, then you're in the right place. Subscribe to our channel for stories that touch the soul and remind us that true worth can never be hidden by uniforms or titles. Ariana's hands were raw from scrubbing. The party above her wasn't meant for people like her. She had entered through the service entrance, given a mop, and told not to be seen. But fate doesn't follow rules. As she knelt in the grand ballroom cleaning a spilled drink, she paused for a second to gaze at the dazzling chandeliers, the silk gowns, and the laughter she could only dream of. A voice spoke behind her. "Are you waiting for someone?" She turned quickly, startled. A tall man in a tailored tuxedo stood there, drink in hand, looking at her, not with disdain but with curiosity. His name was Damien Carter, the billionaire host of the night. She rose to her feet and answered plainly that she was just cleaning. Damien frowned slightly and said he thought she was a guest. He added that she didn't belong in a uniform. For a moment, silence hung between them. Then she replied with quiet conviction that maybe not, but she belonged somewhere better than this. Something shifted in Damien. It was the way she said it. Not bitter or angry, but steady and sure. She wasn't asking for pity. She knew she was meant for more. Damien had spoken to hundreds of women that night, socialites, heiresses, actresses, but none had looked him straight in the eye like she did. Standing there with calloused hands and a damp mop, he asked for her name. She said Ariana. Cautious, unsure if she was about to be scolded or dismissed, he didn't respond right away. He nodded, offered a slight smile, and turned away into the crowd. She stood frozen for a beat, then slowly returned to her task. The moment passed, like a bubble that popped, but something warm lingered inside her chest. That man, one of the wealthiest in the country, had looked at her like she was visible. It was a rare feeling. Most of her life she had learned to blend into the background, to move quietly, to not dream too loud. Ariana had grown up in the south side of the city. Her mother had but been a housekeeper before arthritis took her hands. Ariana had studied architecture once, made it halfway through college before bills and family swallowed her future. Dropping out wasn't a decision, it was survival. She cleaned houses in the morning, took care of her younger brother at night, and tried not to look too long at the lights. She wasn't meant to touch them. Night passed in a blur of footsteps and whispered music. Ariana moved from corner to corner, picking up after crystal glasses and crumpled napkins. But something inside her had changed. His words kept echoing in her head. "You don't belong in a uniform." Was that pity, or something else? Meanwhile, Damien stood near the piano, laughing with diplomats, but his thoughts kept drifting back to her. There had been something unpolished but radiant, real, in a room full of masks. She had looked at him without wearing one. After the party ended and guests drifted out into the night, Ariana stayed behind to help clean the ballroom. Her supervisor barked orders, eager to lock up. She didn't argue. She never did. But as she gathered her supplies, she noticed something on the floor beneath a velvet curtain. A silver cufflink. She picked it up, wiped it gently with her apron, and turned it over. It was engraved with the initials DC. She could have kept walking, but she didn't. She found herself heading toward the private study on the far side of the estate. She knocked softly. The door opened almost instantly. Stood there, shirt slightly unbuttoned, booty loose. For a moment, neither of them spoke. She held out the cufflink and said she found Ether took it, and their fingers brushed for a second too long. He asked if she had come all the way back just for this. She said it looked important. He nodded and told her it was a gift from his father. They stood in silence until Damien asked her to sit with him. Just for a minute she hesitated, then stepped inside. The study was warm, lined with shelves of books, and smelled faintly of old leather. She sat carefully at the edge of a chair. Damien poured 2 glasses of water and sat across from her. He said he had seen hundreds of people at his parties, but none like her. She didn't seem to care who he was, she answered honestly. In that moment, she just wanted to finish cleaning and not get fired. He laughed, a real laugh. Then he asked about what she meant earlier when she said she belonged somewhere better. She looked down and explained that she knew she wasn't just the job she did, that there was something more in her. But sometimes, life didn't care about you more. It just handed you a bucket. He leaned forward and said he knew that feeling more than she might think. She raised her brow, skeptical. He told her that his father had left behind more debt than fortune, that the house and his name were inherited. But the empire was built from chaos. People believed he was born with gold, but he was born with pressure and ruin. He simply learned how to polish the story. Something softened between them. They talked for nearly an hour, about mothers who worked too hard, about lost futures, about dreams that hummed like lullabies in the background of everyday struggle. When she stood to leave, He walked her to the door. He asked if he would see her again. She said she doubted it. Their worlds didn't really cross, he said, they just did. Damien Carter stood in his private office, sunlight bleeding through the floor-to-ceiling windows, yet all he could see was her, Ariana, the woman in the uniform, the one on her knees at his gala, the one who didn't belong there, yet somehow, which belonged more than anyone else. He had spoken to celebrities, diplomats, and influencers, people whose names danced across headlines. But none of them stayed in his mind like she did, a few words a moment. And now, he paced his office like a man haunted by something unexplainable. He tried to ignore it, tried to push it aside as a fleeting moment of curiosity. But it wasn't. There was something in her voice, the way she stood, the way she said she belonged somewhere better. It stirred something in him, something buried beneath tailored suits, quarterly reports, and polished press releases. Something raw, something true. He thought of his own past, the mess his father left behind, the debt, the embarrassment, the years spent pretending he was born into comfort when he had clawed his way into it. Her voice reminded him of that fire, the one he'd hidden for years just to be accepted in circles like the one she was forced to clean the next morning. He asked his staff about her, but no one knew who she was. She wasn't on any official list, a fill-in, a temp, just another face blurred by labor, forgotten by those she served. She had vanished into the cracks like so many others. Invisible again. Damien sat back, hands steepled beneath his chin. His empire was built on numbers and facts, but this woman had him chasing a ghost. He couldn't explain why. He only knew that when she looked at him, she saw through him in while. Ariana walked home beneath a sky bruised with midnight. Her feet ached. Her jacket did nothing against the wind that sliced through the city, but she barely felt it. Her thoughts spun wildly, not just from exhaustion but from the memory of that strange, fleeting moment with the billionaire. She hadn't known who he was until someone whispered it near the buffet. Damien Carter. The Damien Carter, real estate tycoon, philanthropist, billionaire, bachelor. But in that moment, standing above her, he had simply looked human, and the way he had looked at her, like she mattered, that lingered. She tried to shake it off. Rich men didn't look twice at girls like her. If he said anything kind, it was probably guilt or reflex. Maybe she reminded him of someone. Maybe he just liked the way she didn't flinch. Either way, it didn't mean anything. Her life didn't allow for maybes. He had shifts to cover, a brother to feed, bills that didn't wait for magic. She had learned long ago that dreams were luxuries, and survival was the only real job. Week past mornings were for bakery counters, afternoons were for cleaning hallways that smelled of lemon and regret, evenings were for tutoring Malik, who still dreamed of space while their rent hung by a thread. And Ariana, she kept her head down and her spirit tucked in tight. Whatever happened at that party, it was over. Then came the call. The number was strange. She almost declined it, but something in her chest nudged her thumb to accept. A voice come precise. If she was Ariana Pierce, it belonged to a woman named Celeste from the Carter Foundation. They were requesting her services for a private cleaning job. High pay, urgent. She asked who referred her. The answer struck her like a match to dry paper. Mr. Damien Carter. The name alone made her knees feel unsteady. She swallowed and agreed, unsure if she was making a mistake or answering fate. A black car arrived within the hour. Its shine reflected everything she wasn't used to. The driver opened the door without a word. Ariana climbed in, her uniform clean but worn, her shoes second-hand, her heart racing in the quiet. The penthouse was unlike anything she'd ever seen. Glass walls stretched toward the clouds, furniture that looked untouched, the kind of space where silence had its own accent. And then he appeared. Damien stood by the window, backlit by the city skyline. He turned, calm but focused, his gaze finding hers like a compass. He told her he had asked for her, not for cleaning, not for service, just for her. She tensed, unsure whether to run or stay. But then he said he couldn't stop thinking about what she had said, that she belonged somewhere better, and he wanted to understand what that meant. Everything in her told her to walk out, to protect herself, protect her pride. But there was no pity in his voice, just quiet interest, genuine curiosity, and something else she couldn't name. So she stayed. They sat together, two people from separate planets, and for a while there was nothing but stillness between them. Then slowly, piece by piece, she let her stories spill out. She spoke of her mother, who cleaned until her bones gave out, of her scholarship to architecture school, of the moment her father died and the bill stole her future, of dropping out to care for Malik, of drawing blueprints at night in silence, when the world was too asleep to steal her hope. He listened, not politely but intently, and when she finished, her voice barely above a whisper, there was no dismissal in his eyes. There was fire. She apologized, thinking she had said too much, that maybe she had ruined whatever this strange moment was. But he thanked her. He said she had spoken more truth in one conversation than most people did in years. She asked if no one ever told him the truth. He said not if they were on payroll. Then he said something that silenced her. He hadn't brought her there out of pity. He wanted to help, not just her but the version of the world she imagined. She bristled at the idea. She didn't want charity, but he didn't offer charity, he offered belief. He called her a visionary who hadn't had time to build. He said he wanted to invest in her in the housing she imagined, in the idea that beauty belonged to everyone. He handed her a folder. Inside were documents, grants, sketches, diagrams that mirrored what she used to draw on scrap paper and junk, mail envelopes. He told her to look through them, to think, and when she was ready, they would begin. She walked out of that penthouse with the folder clutched like it was fire and oxygen at once. She didn't stop shaking until she reached home that night. She pulled out her old notebooks, her printouts, her sketches. She spread them across the floor like offerings to a future that had always felt like fiction for the first time in years. She believed it might matter. In the weeks that followed, Ariana's world shifted beneath her feet like a landscape waking up after a long winter. She wasn't scrubbing floors or folding linens anymore. She was sitting in meetings. She was listening to architects, asking questions, challenging ideas. She was sketching again, not in notebooks meant to be hidden, but on wide whiteboards in glass-walled conference rooms where people actually listened. On him kept his word. He wasn't just funding the idea, he was protecting it every time the process threatened to swallow her. Every time the voice of doubt crept in like fog, he reminded her that she had a place at the table, not as a guest, but as the one who built the table in the first place. Media outlets caught wind of the story. The cleaning woman turned visionary. It was easy to romanticize, but Ariana kept the truth grounded. She said it wasn't a fairy tale, it was work. Years of unseen labor finally being seen. Her voice wasn't soft or polished for sound bites, it was steady. It was real. She called the project Myra, house named after her mother, Miriam, who had once told her that even invisible people deserve beauty. Myra also meant look, because all of this had started when someone finally looked. Myra House wasn't just shelter, it was space for dignity. Gardens, sunlight, reading corners, rooms designed not just for living but for breathing, for recovering. For starting against. Construction began in a neighborhood long forgotten by city maps. Ariana was there every day, hard hat on, clipboard in hand. Malik walked beside her sometimes, pointing to the unfinished walls and asking where the library would go. She would smile and point to the east wing, already planning more than what the blueprints allowed. Damien watched from the background. He rarely took credit. He didn't need to. The vision was hers. The voice was hers. He was just the wind behind her sail. Then came the night that changed everything. 1 year after the ballroom encounter, another gala was held in the same mansion, same chandeliers, same elegance, but this time the woman stepping out of the sleek black car was not a cleaner. She was Ariana Pierce, founder of Ariana's Rise, architect of Myra House, speaker, advocate, leader. She wore emerald silk that flowed with every step, her hair coiled and pinned, her presence undeniable. People whispered is that her the woman. From the stories, she didn't need their approval. She had already lived without it. Damien met her at the entrance. He offered his arm and she took it. Not as someone rescued, but as someone standing beside an equal. They walked into the ballroom, and the air seemed to shift, not because of glamour, but because of gravity. The speeches began. Names were called. Applause rippled like polite waves. Then Ariana stepped onto the stage. No notes, no teleprompter, just her voice. She said she used to clean those floors, and she was proud of that, because even then she carried a vision, a quiet fire, a truth. Said it took one person choosing to look instead of glance to start it all. She said the world didn't need more charity, it needed more chances. She said invisible people weren't broken, just buried. She said she didn't rise because someone gave her a handout. She rose because someone finally stopped talking and started listening. The room went still. Then the applause came, not a ripple, but a wave, fierce roar. Real people stood, some wiped tears, some simply stared. But Ariana, she smiled softly and stepped down. Later that night, she stood at the edge of the balcony watching the city twinkle like a sky turned upside down. Damien joined her, quiet as always. He didn't speak at first. Then he said she had changed his world. She replied that he reminded her she still had one to build. Below them, lights flickered on in neighborhoods still fighting to be seen. But something had started, something rooted, something rising. Myra House was the first, it would not be the last. Ariana Pierce was no longer the woman on her knees in a borrowed uniform. She was the architect of spaces and lives and stories. She did not need chandeliers to shine. She had become her own light, and through her, others would finally see their way forward.